Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Hedge End, West End and Botley Local Area Committee. My name is Councillor Cllr Garton, and I will be chairing the meeting this evening. Councillors are reminded that to take part in this meeting, you must have an open mind so that you can take all the relevant considerations presented to you in the meeting into account in reaching your decision. By attending today, you have decided that you will listen to all points of view expressed by the speakers and public and are able to participate and cannot be seen to have predetermined the application. This meeting will be recorded and will be uploaded to the Council's website. If any members of the public prefer not to be recorded, then do please contact a member of staff. If you are planning on filming or recording this meeting, then do please let us know so that we can ensure you are not filming members of the public that do not wish to be filmed. The Chair reserves the right to ask any filming considered intrusive to be stopped. More information is available on the Council website. We always welcome people to speak at the meeting, although this is a formal committee meeting of Eastleigh Borough Council and not a public meeting. The members of the public that are registered to speak will be invited to speak at the relevant agenda item and will be given a total of 3 minutes to speak. When the amber light is showing, they have 1 minute remaining. People wishing to speak on an item on the agenda are able to do so before the debate starts. Once the debate has started, however, it is not possible to invite or receive comments from the floor. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will now start the meeting. So, item 1, apologies, and I think we're a full house. Yep, everyone's here, that's brilliant. Right, item 2 is declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest they wish to make? If so, please indicate now, and when called, please state the nature and reason for the interest. You can, of course, declare any interests as they occur to you in the meeting. Councillor Hadaway.
Hello. I'd like to declare an interest on item 7, which is the planning application for 64 Goodlands Vale, which is directly opposite my property.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hadaway. Right, we will now move on to item 3, public participation, but we don't have anyone registered to speak, so we'll swiftly move on to item 4, which is the Chair's report. I was delighted to see so many people attend last week's LAC meeting regarding the Aegeus Utility Bowl application. It was good to see and hear the residents of West End voice their opinions and take part in the discussions. It would be great to see more residents attending our HEWEB LAC meetings in the future. As many of you will know, Hampshire Cricket and the Rose Bowl have successfully secured Utilita to sponsor the naming rights of the stadium. Having read in the media, they have an aspiration to make it one of the greenest cricket grounds in the country and are looking to install more than 1,000 solar panels at the stadium to help tackle climate change and be more environmentally friendly, subject to planning. Although I was disappointed to see Barclays close their branch in Hedge End Village last year, I was pleased that Eastleigh Borough Council, Hedge End Town Council and Barclays were able to agree for Barclays to have a mobile banking van on the former Budgeon site on Wednesdays. On the 24th of January, together with other EBC councillors, including those from this committee, I attended a meeting with the NHS and Integrated Care Board to find out more about the proposed new hospital to be located just outside of Basingstoke as part of the Hampshire Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. Although a new hospital sounds positive, concerns were raised regarding funding, residents of Eastleigh accessing A&E and public transport links to get to the site, especially as certain services are being located from Winchester to Basingstoke. Hopefully the NHS will take these comments into account when designing services at the new hospital. Although I was unable to attend due to prior commitments, I was pleased to hear that our new EBC Director, Dee O'Rourke, attended a tour of the HEWEB area on the 18th of January and visit so many important sites and meet lots of key partners along the way. The Hatch Farm Public Art Consultation took place on Friday the 26th of January, and dialogue continues with residents about the design and location of the artwork. I attended the Christmas show Father Christmas, although it seems a long time ago now, adapted from the Raymond Briggs book at this Bury Theatre in December, and it was absolutely brilliant. And I know it was well attended by lots of people of all ages who gave us really positive feedback. It has just been announced that the Christmas show at the Bury this year will be There's a Monster in Your Christmas Show, adapted from There's a Monster in Your Book by the popular children's author Tom Fletcher, who was also a member of the band McFly. We have David Baddiel coming to the Bury on the 4th, 5th and 6th of March, and some tickets are still available. The Bury is also putting on monthly accessible cinema shows and a monthly comedy club called Bury Funny. So please see the Bury website for more details. We are very fortunate to have this Bury Theatre in our community, giving local people access to some fabulous productions, some with very well-known faces, and all just within a short walk or drive at very competitive prices. Finally, I would like to remind everyone that we have less than 9 days left for young people or community groups working with young people to apply for our youth-themed community grants funding at HEWEB. The closing date for applications is Wednesday, the 14th of February. Thank you very much. Right, we'll now move on to item 5, which is the presentation of planning guidelines, and I'd like to ask Rebecca Altman to present those, please. Rebecca.
Thank you. So this is just a quick summary of how we determine the applications and what we have to take into account. They've all got to be determined on planning grounds, and the committee must determine the applications in line with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And in this borough, the development plan is the Eastleigh Borough Local Plan, adopted in 2022, and the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan, although I don't believe that's relevant to any of the applications tonight. Other relevant considerations include supplementary planning documents, which include ones relating to quality places design, residential parking standards and planning obligations, relevant government policy, including the National Planning Policy Framework, and we do have a listed building item on this agenda, so the Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act also becomes a relevant consideration, and the impact on the setting and architectural interest of that building. The NPPF's key requirements include delivering sustainable development without delay, meeting housing need to boost housing delivery, promoting growth of the economy, requiring high standards of design, and preventing or mitigating impacts. And it includes the presumption in favour of sustainable development, which has 3 elements to it: economic, social and environmental, which must all be considered together. Other material considerations that can be taken into account include, although not limited to, planning history, previous applications, in some cases appeal decisions, site-specific matters such as highways, residential amenity, visual amenity, ecology, drainage, trees and landscaping, consultee and third-party comments, and precedent or case law. And then some things that are not planning issues that we can't take into account include moral, racial and religious views, devaluation of property, loss of a private view, breach of a covenant, matters covered by other laws such as building regulations or environmental legislation, personal views about the character of an applicant, or civil matters such as boundary disputes. And then just to summarise, what decisions can be made today. If a decision is made contrary to the recommendation of the officer, then it must be minuted with clear reasons given for approval or refusal. There is an option to defer to seek amendments or further information, and it must be indicated what those are. And there is an option to add further controls on, such as conditions, if they are considered reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And we will indeed move to our first planning application, which is item 6, and it's the land adjacent to Botley Park Primary School and for the purposes of a nursery. And I'd like to ask Rebecca to present the report, please. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. So, this application relates to a site which is within the Botley Park development. The Google Maps hasn't caught up at all yet, so it's a bit out of date and doesn't show half of the development that's been built. But this site is directly adjacent to Botley Park Primary School and is accessed from Nairn Road, which comes off Wallace Avenue, which is one of the main roads through the development. The nearest residential properties are to the west here in Turnberry Close and to the south here on Nairn Road. The proposed development is for the construction of a children's day nursery, which would accommodate up to 81 children. It would be accessed from Nairn Road from the southern side of the site with parking provided, and with the children's play areas to the north of the site and landscaping around the rest of it. Just to summarise the history of this site, because there have been a few applications for a nursery on this site. There was a nursery permitted in 2020, which was also a nursery for up to 81 children with the same level of parking. The difference was it had a very different orientation, and the parking was on the east side, and the design was much more modern, just a very different design. Then this application then follows one that was submitted last year, which was for the orientation and the design that you've just seen in the previous slide, but it was refused, but only on the grounds of lack of ecology and drainage information. And those matters have now been addressed through this current application that we've got before us. So I've just got some photographs of the site. This is the access from the end of Nairn Road when you go left at the end, gated into the site. Well, there's a gate into the site at the moment, and it's currently quite overgrown and vacant. And that's these two photos look across the site to the north and west, and these are the houses in Turnberry Close. And then this photograph looks south, and this is a substation, I believe, and this building here. And then some photographs of the access road. So this is looking south down Nairn Road, which is the main access road to the site. This is looking east towards the Botley Park School car park entrance. And then this photograph looks north along Nairn Road, which shows the school in the background. And then the site that we're looking at is to the left behind that house there. And then this is just a photograph looking west along Wallace Avenue. And then finally, I took some photographs from Turnberry Close, looking back towards the school across the site, which you can see here. And then these photographs are taken adjacent to the boundary of this dwelling here. This is its back garden here, which is walled, and the site is at a lower level to these houses, and you've got the parking area here. In terms of the design, it would be a single-storey building, a brick-built building of red brick, which would complement the adjacent housing, with a pitched roof. It has had, or during the previous application, it had various amendments to the design to enhance the appearance and also to address some of the matters raised by design consultees. So there were some additional windows added to the side elevations, for example, and enlarged windows to the rear, which was to bring more light into the children's playrooms, and also to add sort of more interest to visual interest to the elevations. The entrance was also redesigned to create more of a feature as you enter into the site, and I've got some 3D images in a minute, and it's more of an angled structure. In terms of the floor plan, it would have 4 main nursery rooms, and then the front southern part of the building would accommodate the staff facilities, including the offices, kitchen, and the reception area. And then these are just some 3D visuals showing the approach as you come into the site, the approach to the nursery, and with the parking to the left there. There has been a landscape plan submitted, but this isn't the final version. It's a good indication of what's being proposed, but there's been some advice from consultees, and you will see that there is a condition proposed for the final landscaping plan to be agreed, which would also include some further biodiversity enhancements to achieve a biodiversity net gain. So subject to that, the ecologists' concern about biodiversity net gain has been addressed. I know that there has been some queries about parking, and these photographs were taken at school pickup time just last week. So it's clear that there is obviously more parking during that time along Wallace Avenue, and the car park to the pavilion is well used at this time. There was a lot of vehicles coming in and out. But there were spaces, and there were spaces further along Wallace Avenue, and cars were entering and leaving all the time. So that it didn't appear to be sort of over parked. There were still places to park, and you can see that Nairn Road. I think there is I believe there's an agreement in place that that people are not supposed to park on Nairn Road, and there was only a few cars there and spaces left. And there's another condition on the actual recommendation, which is for a drop-off and delivery management plan to be agreed. And one possible thing would be for parents of the nursery, in the same way they do at the school, would be to park here in the pavilion car park, cross the road here, which is where I saw people crossing, and walk up to the nursery here during the peak drop-off and pick-up times of the school. But the point being that the nursery would open earlier and close later, and would have staggered drop-offs and pick-ups. So it's not actually envisaged that it would conflict actually that much with the school. And if it did, there's going to be linked trips as well. And the hope that the nursery would be used by many residents of the estate, and therefore also to encourage, non-car use. So, which is part of the reason why it's not got a huge car park. So just to summarise the key considerations, the principle of this proposal has been established. There has been a nursery of the same size permitted on the site, and it would provide a facility that benefits the local community. The layout and design is determined to be acceptable in relation to its context. The ecology and drainage matters that were the reason for refusing the previous scheme in June last year have been overcome and addressed, in some cases addressed by condition. There's not considered to be any adverse impact on neighbouring amenity, and access and parking has been determined to be acceptable, and there's no objection from the local highway authority. So the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for that presentation. Right, we have one person registered to speak on this application, and this is Mr. Daryl Howells, who's a planning consultant speaking on behalf of the application in support. Mr. Howells, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, members. Sorry, is the microphone on? Sorry. Okay. Good evening, members. My name is Daryl Howells, representing my own planning consultancy, and I have worked on this project from the outset with your planning officer, Rebecca Altman. Firstly, I'd like to thank Rebecca for her robust examination of the planning application to ensure her recommendation to approve is fully justified in planning terms. As you have heard, planning permission was approved previously for a children's nursery. However, that scheme was a speculative one. My client's scheme is not. The end user shall be a company known as Happy Days Nurseries. Happy Days Nurseries is an award-winning company highly rated by Ofsted. The company was started in 1991 and now operates 23 nurseries throughout the south coast of England and Wales. Their ethos is to support children to become strong and motivated and provide childcare and learning experiences to the highest standards. If planning permission is granted, then this application will become a reality to meet the growing needs of the community. This proposal shall employ 20 plus members of staff subject to shift patterns and roles. Staff will be encouraged to walk, cycle, car share, or take the number 3 bus that stops outside Nairn Road frequently from 6:30 in the morning onwards. These measures will ensure that car parking on site are prioritised for parents. Children will not arrive at peak times, but throughout the morning in an order to avoid high demand and congestion. Condition number 10 requires a vehicle management plan to assist with that coordination as requested by your highway officers and wholly accepted by the applicant and the end user. The proposal has the full support of your officers in the fields of planning, water management, landscaping, ecology and highways. I acknowledge that the urban design officer has concerns about the layout. However, the scheme has been designed to meet the specific needs of the end user, who is the expert in the field. The proposal will offer a natural educational environment which will be planted with native trees and vegetation, encouraging children to learn about biodiversity and plant life. Happy Day Nurseries confirmed that this design meets their specific needs and offers the best layout for education for children. The proposal has addressed both the reasons for refusal of the previous scheme, as your planning officer has highlighted. The planning officer has made a balanced judgment, assessing the proposal against the adopted planning policies, and considered that it would become an asset to the community. I would ask you to endorse the recommendation to approve, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howells. Right, we don't have any other speakers registered to speak on this item. So, councillors, I'm now going to open it up for councillors' questions, please. Any Councillor Kyrle?
Thank you, Chair. Just a few points, really. Taking on board the comments just made by the previous speaker. I think there's 8 or was it 8, 9 spaces that are approved on site? And I think there's like sort of cycle racks or whatever. My real concern is obviously, even if there are shifts and everything else, how many members of staff are going to be on site at any one time? The reality, as we well know, is the fact that people probably won't take the bus, and people probably won't cycle and probably won't walk. They will drive because it's the far more convenient thing to do, unfortunately, but that is the case. And unfortunately, as much as the number 3 bus may go past quite regularly, probably won't be running at the same time as people's shifts start or finish or whatever, etc. So my concern, which has been my concern over a period of time with this, is that, albeit I appreciate that the established permission for a nursery on this site is already given, and the fact that it would be welcome. My concern is still about parking capacity on site, albeit that I appreciate it has been increased. Also, I think the previous reason for refusal was regarding ecology, which clearly, although it's conditioned, this current application clearly hasn't been resolved. So although it was previously refused because of ecological issues and conditioned on this one, it hasn't been resolved. So I would have thought, considering that was one of the reasons why it was refused, it would have been resolved within this application. So it'd be good to get a couple of comments on that. And I understand also that have all the SUDS issues been resolved, were part of the certainly concerns that were raised.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, in relation to parking, I think you probably mentioned the points that I would make, which is that there's 12 spaces on the site, 7 for staff, or 7 or 8 for staff, but it's the same as what was granted before in terms of the size of the nursery and the number of parking spaces, and it becomes a sort of balance between how much parking you have on the site, in terms of what you can then get on the site, because it's a limited size, so you'd have a smaller nursery with more parking, or you have a large nursery with less parking. But the Highways Authority has always been quite comfortable with this provision, and to be honest, there aren't actually parking standards to assess it against, although I did have a look at I think Southampton's parking standards for nurseries, and it would actually comply with that. I think they asked for a space per 4 members of staff, so it would actually meet that, for example, although we don't have that standard in place ourselves. And there's also the points I made before about having the sort of linked trips and the different times of day, and the encouragement of staff to use alternative means of transport. In terms of the ecology reason for refusal, I think there's been a slight misunderstanding, because the previous refusal in relation to ecology was to do with a lack of surveying and a lack of information about the actual state of the site and what the potential was for protected species, in particular reptile surveys. So that was all then done. They did all the reptile surveys, so they addressed those points. The biodiversity net gain matter was not specifically a reason for refusal of the last one, but it is a matter that we have to take into account. And it was just sort of to the point where we haven't quite agreed the precise landscaping scheme, and the ecologist wants to see more, like more flowering plants, more wildlife-friendly species and things like that. And it was decided that that could be put in as a condition for a final landscape plan. Thank you.
My further question is with regards to the traffic management plan which is proposed from the adjacent community building. Has the parish council been consulted as to whether this is a viable option, given it's potentially either theirs or certainly going to be their car park that you're proposing to mitigate any impact of traffic or parking, whatever?
No, not at this stage. That's not a formal agreement at this stage. It was a suggestion by the Highway Authority because it's already used during school drop-off and pick-up. So it was a suggestion that that works well at the school time, that could be used for the nursery. But those final details haven't been established yet. The condition would allow alternative arrangements if they were necessary to be agreed.
Okay, fair enough, because that is a concern that if the parish council were to say that that car park wasn't available, then that would potentially displace quite a significant amount of cars onto Wallace Avenue, Nairn Road, at most times of drop-off and pick-up times.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Tennent.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question about parking standards. Are there any EV charging points going to be put in this car park?
I actually don't have the answer to that, but I'm sure it's something that the nursery operators have probably thought about, and I can see that the agent is nodding that there would be some incorporated. Yeah.
Councillor Kinloch.
Thank you. Just a question about the Nairn Road bit. You mentioned that there was an agreement not to park on it or not to use it for parking. Where was that agreement? Who was that with? Did it affect the residents? Because I don't think the residents know about that.
Apologies, I think I'd read that in one of the Highway Authority's comments. I may be mistaken, but it certainly looked like when I was out there that cars were not going up Nairn Road to access the school. I'm not sure that parents can go into the car park, so I believe they just park along Wallace Avenue. But I don't know for certain if that is a formal agreement. All I know is that there are discussions between the Highway Authority and the developer, but I don't know what the nature of those are.
Any other questions from councillors, please? Yes, Councillor Pretty, sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I've read the report, and my main concern, having been on several occasions for various reasons, is the speed of traffic in Wallace Avenue, the restricted width in Nairn Road, and requiring access to both the nursery and to the school. Is it possible for us to condition it that an improved form of crossing is provided between the sports pavilion and the north side of the road, just to give safe access? Because so when I went round there the other afternoon, a car went flying past me, and I'm thinking, although we can't necessarily control that, we could at least consider trying to put in a safe means of crossing. That's the only question I would have.
I would say for the scheme, for the nursery of a scheme of this size, it wouldn't be reasonable and to require them to fund a crossing, and it hasn't been requested by the Highway Authority, so we have no grounds to condition that.
Kyrle.
Just a question about, I understand that given that there have already been two quite serious accidents on Wallace Avenue, relatively close to the Nairn Road junction, I think it was on the brow of the hill, and the fact that the highway at the moment is not adopted, I understand the County Council are undertaking a safety audit of the road, which obviously could be what you're alluding to with regards to discussions between the County Council and the developer. And certainly I know as local members we have raised issues of highway safety, given that that road is very long and lends itself Councillor Kinloch is very well aware of those issues as well. And that the proposal by the Highway Authority is to have a sort of park and stride sort of site, and the school obviously needs to be doing that already. One of your photographs actually, I think, of the parking actually showed it very well actually, where the car is parked very close actually to the, in fact I'll drop back that one. Yes, there, parked very close to the proposed potential safe crossing point. And I'm concerned really that the county have basically, I've seen before, said there aren't any issues with highway matters, which clearly if they are undertaking safety audits of the highway, I would have suggested that they are potentially looking to do stuff. We are actually then saying, or they are then saying, sorry, from the traffic management plan perspective, that it is safe to walk from that car park, across that road and up to the school. Given the fact they're undertaking a safety audit, that sort of puts a big question mark in my mind, really, to be honest with you, about highway safety in that location. And certainly there are no school signs or yellow lines, yellow school signs or whatever, wig-wag flashing signs or whatever. There's nothing there at all to highlight to road users that there are schools sort of just up the road, if you like, which I think is a failure on behalf of either the developer or the county or both. Certainly makes me very nervous, not the principle of the nursery, but the potential issues for highway safety given increase in school car usage, pedestrians and children around that area, especially as you've got a play area or the play area in that location very, very close. There's no railings to stop anybody running across the road. So I am concerned that there hasn't been some more dialogue really with the County Council with regards to this matter.
I don't think there's much I can come back on other than to say that because the Highway Authority hadn't objected, I did liaise with them in terms. I think when we had the first application in, I did mention that there were ongoing concerns, but they commented that the sort of the way that the roads and the estate was designed was envisaged that there was always going to be a school and a nursery here, so they've never raised an issue with the sort of traffic trip rates and level of traffic in that area from a school and a nursery. But any discussions that are ongoing between the county and the developer is sort of outside of the remit of this application, so I haven't been involved and I couldn't comment on that, unfortunately.
Any other questions wants to raise? Right. Okay then, in that case then, does any councillor wish to start the debate, please? Councillor Kinloch. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it's unfortunate the developers kind of caught up, or the proposer of this application is kind of caught up in a bit of a problem. Hampshire have got the eternal problem where a school doesn't need parking, a school doesn't need safe drop-off access. They've stuck it on Nen Road, which is narrow, with no parking, with nothing else, when actually an application for a nursery is much needed. We need the 81 places for people of Botley Park, and probably Botley Gardens, which means people are going to be driving. Now, it is the space on site that worries me in terms of the amount of parking and the traffic management plan. But it is really frustrating because when the Highways Authority says there is no problem, they already acknowledge that actually there's been 2 accidents on Willis Avenue at school drop-off time, because people park on the lesser curve of Wallace Avenue. There is a single lane, there is dual lane traffic essentially coming up one lane, and there is no safe crossing point. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the fact that the school is still 2 years short of a full school. So when the car park is not full, actually it is a case that we're still 100 or so, at least 60 children short of a full school, which is another potential 60 cars that's coming onto site. Now, there is a highways audit being done. It is stuck between the developers and Hampshire County Council. I know of that because I've spoken to both the developers off-site of the Botley Park development and Hampshire County Council. It's still going back between those two. And we don't have a safe crossing here. It is a disappointment that, again, Hampshire County Council have stripped all of the safe crossing patrols out of Hampshire. And this is a perfect place where a school crossing patrol would absolutely be the right thing to do. A crossing, there is no crossing on Wallace Avenue. The crossing at the top of the hill is where exactly the point at which the accident happened, and two cars came head-on into the sun, wrote both cars off. There have been reported accidents or near misses on that junction. We have got the play area that's there. There are no railings on the side of the road. And there are no railings on the side of Nairn Road. So preschoolers coming down Nairn Road towards the car park come across the road, and it is a bit mad. Because people won't catch the bus. Because the bus doesn't run at the right times for schools. The problem is the school drop-off and school pick-up times are the crunch for this particular area. It's the house you can see in the picture there, number 1 Nairn Road. They objected to the first application for the traffic concerns and safety concerns. They've raised it again, not on this application, but to me about the concerns anyway on a regular basis, as has somebody further up Nairn Road. So it is a case of we need a nursery. Unfortunately, the nursery is not in a great place, but we need to make sure the traffic management plan, there's cars coming in and off site is thought about. And we need to get Hampshire to actually pull their finger out and do what they should have done a long time ago, which is adopt the roads, put yellow lines down, get the safety management plan agreed, look at school crossing patrols again, because this is what's needed, get safety railings put in where we need the safety railings put in, and then actually this is probably a welcome thing on a site that needs childcare, that would actually be accessible to most. And so it's kind of, it's a yes, but it is need to think about the planning of how to get that done quicker. And I'm sorry the developers got caught up in the middle of some of those bits and pieces, because it's not fair on them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kinloch. Councillor House.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hearing lots of issues from Rupert and Dave that are the responsibility of the County Council and are not the responsibility of this applicant. And we can't hold the applicants to ransom on the basis of the County Council failing to make roads safe, or to provide crossing points, or to provide crossing patrols, or to adopt roads, much as we'd like to. So we have to take all those issues offline. I'm sure Rupert, as County Councillor for Botley Park, already is, and will continue to do so, and we'll keep jabbing away at county staff and the county systems to try and tackle most of these issues. Although we know the county's response on school crossing patrols now is this responsibility of the schools and parish councils to fund them, not the County Council, which is the Highway Authority, not the County Council, which is the Education Authority. So we've got to look at what's in front of us on this application. And it strikes me that the development on this site has already been permitted, and the refusal that was on the last application were on select grounds that have now been dealt with. So we wouldn't be in a position to refuse this on highway grounds anyway, because we've already effectively given it one permission with the highways accepted, and the County Council's Highway Authority don't object to the application. So on that basis, and on the basis that our job is to determine what's in front of us, I'll move permission as here with the conditions as here.
Thank you very much, Councillor House. Councillor Asman.
Thank you, Chair. I must say that I heartily agree with Councillor Kinloch on this one. It was something I was going to raise, and knowing Hampshire the Highway Authority's view on drop-off points and the difficulty we have with all schools, all new applications for schools, I would like to see the terms of this agreement prior to planning permission being granted. It's prior to occupation of the development. We could be here, and I mean, I can see as that being conditioned for year on endless year. So we would be left with a school with no access, the traffic piling up in the surrounding roads, and all the attendant problems. So I'm extremely unhappy about that, and it's something I feel very strongly about. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Asman. Any other councillor? Councillor Corben.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak actually this evening, but when I think of other schools, this application is a compromise, as all planning applications are to some degree. But I don't think the school is compromised. I think the school and the applicant, has delivered what effectively what we asked them to do last time. So I agree with Councillor House. We all know local schools, and it is a failure of the county council. Every school, if we were to audit car speed outside, I can think of those in Hedge End that members will know about, especially those in very tight residential areas. Wellstead is a good example where cars speed around corners, and it is very, very busy. So there always is a compromise, and I think having read the paper and listened to the debate so far, I'm certainly minded to vote with approval. So I'm happy to second Councillor House's proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Kyrle. Can I ask you, Councillor Kyrle, if you could just talk into the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, possibly some people would be happy that they couldn't hear me probably. I do understand that it is not the developer of the nursery's fault with regards to this. However, with regards to good planning, and clearly something that has been seeded many years ago with the master planning of this, is now causing a ripple effect, and this ripple effect will get bigger by definition of the fact that it is being poorly located and on a site that has had many issues and continues to have a considerable number of issues, unfortunately, which is the fault of all sorts of people, including the developers, etc., of the estate. What I'm concerned about is exacerbating that issue. My concern is the county council saying that there is no highway issue because you can have a management plan where you can use somebody else's car park without even asking them. That is not a given. It is not an agreement. It's not on the table. It's not been signed off. And we're being asked to say that we accord with a statutory consultee that says there is no issue, when they clearly have done nothing whatsoever to come to the table with the fact that they've been delayed in bringing forward their traffic safety audit of the highway, the fact that it's not adopted, the fact that there are no school signs or lines or warning signs or anything else for anybody at all, saying that there is a school in the area, or the fact that there are children going to be crossing the road in relative numbers, the fact that they are proposing a traffic management plan across a road that then has none of that, I think is quite shameful, frankly, to be perfectly honest with you, from the county's perspective. Nothing to do with the nursery. And again, I agree with Councillor Kinloch and others that we do need a nursery on site. But what I'm worried about is causing another continuing deteriorating problem once the school is full, once the nursery is built and is up and running and everything else. And the county will say, well, if there's no accident data, therefore we're not worried about it, it's not a problem. But residents are continually, daily, twice a day or whatever, having to cross a road that is a high-speed road because these measures have not been put in place right from the beginning. No fault of anybody's that the nursery isn't actually on site at the moment. Even now, potentially that should have been something that should have been brought forward earlier. But I think we're just saddling the community, unfortunately, with another issue that will probably come back and bite us every so often, albeit that the county have now taken back decriminalised parking, so of course it's down to them whether or not any yellow lines ever get put in anywhere. So the chances are potentially that won't happen either. So I just think it's just a really poor show, really, to be honest with you, from the county's perspective, that we're not going to see any of these measures put in place because they're just not that bothered about these things. They say all the good words, etc. But in reality, it's all down to finances, and they haven't got any money. And it will be the residents, unfortunately, who will be saddled with this. What I would like to do is defer this until such time as the County Council come forward with a safety audit on the highway and any proposals potentially that they are going to come up with to actually try and slow some of the traffic down, which is already speeding on a daily basis on this road, and therefore potentially will be causing problems of speed and highway safety when you do have quite a considerable amount of traffic of children and parents crossing the roads at all times of the day, potentially now with the nursery coming on board. Given the fact that the application doesn't need to be, well, it needs to be built, shall we say, or started within 3 years, so potentially it would be open within a couple of years. I would have thought that that would have given ample time potentially for the county to get their act together and get something put in place. But certainly I would not want to agree to something which would potentially put residents and children at risk.
Councillor Kyrle, if I had this right, you're proposing to defer this application.
Well, I'd like some proper surety and exploration of the County Council's position with regards to highway safety in this particular location. So I don't have a lot open to, got lots of options apart from refusal. I don't want to refuse this because we do need to have a nursery. What I'm concerned about is that if we take this at face value at this time when we have a plan proposed by the county where you are parking across the other side of a road that you don't have permission for, if the parish turn around and said, no, you're not using that car park, and that's including the school as well now, then I'm sure they won't, but no one's asked that question. That's not a given. And they're saying, therefore, there are no highway issues because that is an option. Well, if that option's removed, then you're going to have lots of cars parking on both sides of the road at certain key times of the day and up Nairn Road and everything else. My concern, that's why I would say defer it until such time as you either understand whether that plan is a goer. If so, and in conjunction with that, the County Council finally publishing their safety audit with regards to that highway, which they were undertaking at the time when they said there was no highway issues. So I don't understand why that has not been mentioned at all with regards to this application when they're promoting walking and walking from one side of the road to the other.
Okay, thank you. I think, did you want to say something, Rebecca? Thank you.
Just a couple of points on that. On the proposal is firstly I'd say, because this is sort of, I suppose, a third of the applications for the nursery, and the Highways Authority's position hasn't changed, so I don't think a deferral would lead us to a different conclusion from the Highway Authority, because they've always commented fairly consistently on these applications. The second point I wanted to make was the condition 12 and the parking management is really only related to the peak school times, and as we've said, and the nursery operator pointed out, nurseries don't tend to have the majority of their drop-off and pick-ups at the same time as the school drop-off pick-up peak. So the option of using that park and stride is really, it was a potential option put forward for those times, but not all the time, because at other times it's not considered to be such an issue. It's the main conflict at the peak school times that was a concern. So I just wanted to make those 2 points, that was all.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Councillor House.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check whether that was in a proposal for an amendment from Councillor Kyrle to defer, because if it is, I'd like to speak against it.
Is this a serious proposal you'd like to put to the committee, Councillor Kyrle, please, before we move on?
Well, I don't have a lot of option really, apart from refusal, and I don't want to do that. But I just do think there is a bit more mileage to go to try and iron out some of these highway safety issues, and they are related to the site. And also, just coming back on the point about the traffic management plan, as Councillor Kinloch highlighted, the school's not full up yet, so potentially you're going to have even more cars. Yes, I'm quite happy to propose deferring this application.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for deferral, please? Are you voting to second it? Yep, okay. So can I have a show of hands, please? Sorry.
We need to debate the amendment, Chair.
your pardon, sorry. So we now need to debate the amendment. Anybody? Yes, Councillor House.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to be really clear where we were in terms of how we were processing the application. I think the key issue here is reasonableness. And whether we like it or not, and I totally appreciate the concerns that colleagues at this end of the table have got around traffic in the area. But this council permitted a 81-place nursery with associated access, car parking and landscaping on this site in May 2020. We've already decided to accept the highway issues. The highway issues haven't changed in the intervening period. The council's position as highway authority hasn't changed in the intervening period. The only reasons the previous applications were refused were on ecology and drainage information. So we certainly wouldn't be able to refuse it on highways grounds at this point because we haven't raised it before. So deferring it on highways grounds is also pretty unreasonable, given we have got no idea at all if the county council will ever come back with the things that Rupert rightly wants. We could be here in a year's time. And all we'd achieve in that is we would delay nursery education for children for an extra year. And I don't think that's reasonable. I totally agree and sympathise with the issues, but that's not the applicant's problem. And in that sense, we have to simply determine what's here in front of us based on the information we've got. And it's pretty clear that, given that we've already agreed this proposal, or a version of it, just a different design, 4 years ago, it was totally unreasonable of us to oppose it on something we didn't object to before. So I strongly don't support the amendment.
Anyone else want to speak on the amendment to defer it, please? Yes, Councillor Welsh.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor House on this. We could be here forever, and I think this local authority would be putting itself, it would look as though we were taking a hammer to crack a nut. We need the nursery. We actually have to accept the fact that we aren't going to get anywhere with Hampshire County Council. We have to accept the fact that in years to come, it may well cause a huge problem that we again will have to deal with. But I don't think I can agree the deferment. It is just putting off the evil day, if I can put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asman. Councillor Welsh.
Right. Well, as we know, schools have always caused us a problem, wherever it is. And as we all know, Hedge End has been an exact example of these problems with parking, and tonight's whole issues have all been around the parking issues. This won't go away. This will get worse. And I think that we've got to, it's no use saying, oh, Hampshire won't do anything. Well, it's their application, so they've, well, it's the school, sorry, it's the developers and the, yes. But we've just got to stop Hampshire from getting their own way every time when it comes to highway problems. We've been doing this for donkey's years, and every time it's Hampshire highways as the main problem. And I think we've got to consider the residents that are already there. The last application, these houses might not have been all around them. So this is present day and the future, and we've got to think of the future for the people that are moving into the area, and then consider a school then. It's too late or too early to start making decisions on another school on that site. So I'm not very happy at all with the parking issues at all.
Thank you very much, Councillor Welsh. Any other councillor wish to speak on the proposal to defer it? No? In which case then, councillors, we will take a vote then on the proposal from Cllr Kyrle, seconded by Cllr Kinloch, to defer, sorry, Councillor Welsh, sorry, I beg your pardon, to defer this application. Could I have a show of hands, please, for deferral? And those against? Right. So that motion is lost. So we will now move to the original motion, which was proposed by Councillor House and seconded by Cllr Corben, to grant planning permission subject to the conditions as set out in the report. Can I have a show of hands, please, for that recommendation? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That recommendation is carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Kinloch.
Just off the back of that, can we actually write to Hampshire County Council Highways and go, this is an unadopted road, this is a problem, and actually not just accept that this is a fatalistic kind of thing and go, do you know what, you need to just kind of pull your finger out and sort it?
I think that's an excellent idea. I know that you've mentioned the developer and Hampshire Highways, Hampshire County Council already in talks to get something done with these roads, and really they basically just need to get on with it. But I think that's an excellent suggestion. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, then we will now move on to item 7, which is the planning application for 64 Goodlands Vale, and Councillor Hadaway is just leaving us to sit down in the auditorium while while we discuss this application. And I'd like to ask Alexandra Stone to present the report, please. Alexandra.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The application is for a single-storey front, rear and side extensions, 2-storey side extension and demolition of garage at 64 Goodlands Vale, Hedge End. The location plan is shown on the left and aerial view on the site on the right. You can see the house faces towards Goodlands Vale and sits behind an area of open space which wraps around the front and northwestern side of the property. There's also a public footpath along the side of the site directly in front of the house at 63 Goodlands Vale. These photos show the principal elevations of neighbouring properties. These show there is a general sense of uniformity within the street scene in terms of materials and design of the front porches. Where dwellings benefit from garages, there are single garages detached from the house and set back from the frontage. The garages are often served by modest dormers and of a uniform size. These photos show the application site taken from the public footpath. Due to the public footpath, the front, side and rear elevations of the dwelling are highly visible and from public vantage points. In the first photograph, you can see the side of the property in its entirety. In the next photograph along, you can see that the footpath is situated to the front of 63 Goodlands Vale. Photograph 4 shows the small detached garage which is proposed to be demolished. This will alter the parking. The requirement set out in the parking guidelines is that a 4-bedroom dwelling, 3 on-site parking spaces are required in which is achievable. These images show the site plan and proposed floor plans. The shaded green areas show the full extent of the proposed extensions and the white area is the existing house. As you can see from the green shading, this is a large extension that wraps around 3 sides of the property, extending the whole width of the plot. The extension has been designed to fit the plot shape and so is awkward with differing roof lines. Within the ground floor, the proposals are to create a study with full bathroom suite within the side extension to the northern side. To the rear, the proposed extension would create a larger lounge and oversized kitchen area. Within the side extension to the southern side, the proposal is to further extend the kitchen with separate staircase leading to the first floor, with a storage area to the front of the dwelling. The southern extension replaces the existing garage. As you can see on the first floor plan, the staircase leading to the first floor extension using large dormer windows to the house, another study with another bathroom. The above slide shows the existing and proposed front and rear elevations as indicated on the site plan. The front elevation, you can see that the porch would have a small gable to the pitch roof which would sit in front of the principal elevation. This would look uncomfortable and create a much larger footprint in comparison to the existing simple canopy, out of character of the area. The proposed 2-storey side extension will replace the existing garage. You can see that the dormer windows are much larger than the neighbouring property's modest dormers, therefore not in keeping with the street scene. The proposed single-storey side extension to the northern elevation is also visible from the front of the property. This follows the boundary line extending further back to the garden, creating an awkward shape. You can see to the rear of the dwelling the extent of the development. The extension creates an awkward relationship between the existing dwelling and the proposed. The rear extension roof line that sits in front of the rear dormers does not fit well and creates an odd feature to the property. As you will be able to see from these proposed elevation, the proposers would add a significant massing to the host dwelling, which would be highly visible from the public footpath. In conclusion, the scale of the development would be significant and at odds with the characteristics of the area. Therefore, my recommendation would be to refuse the planning permission for the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And we do have a written statement from Mr. Kevin Marsh objecting to this application, and it'll be read out by Ross. Ross, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bit closer. Statement from Kevin Marsh. As the property owner of the adjacent property since 1991, when these houses were built, we confirm we have an alleyway adjacent to the garage of number 64, which is our boundary from the front of the garage to the start of the rear fence at the end of the garage. We did cover this alleyway with a roof so we could use the space as storage back in 1993 with agreement of the previous owners, so it is fixed to the garage wall. If the garage is demolished, whilst I understand I would have to remove the roof, this then removes my boundary from the front to the rear and leaves my property exposed. I therefore ask what provision will be made and put in place to reinstate my boundary, whether it's a new wall or fence. As the current owner has the property up for sale, what future provisions will be put in place to protect my boundary and the security of my property within this application? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ross. Would you like to come back on any of that, Alexandra? Points that Mr. Marsh has raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that's a civil matter for boundary treatment, so I'd say to seek legal advice.
Unfortunately, that's not something we've taken into consideration. You would have to obtain your own legal advice. We will not be able to provide that, but it's not a planning matter.
Thank you very much, Nikki. So we will now move on to questions from councillors. Any questions from councillors, please, regarding this application? Yes, Councillor Corben.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question. I can't remember seeing it in the report about parking spaces. I know you've raised it, Alexandra. How does the applicant deal with that? Does it satisfy what we will need, 3 parking spaces?
Thank you. There is adequate. We could condition that because at the moment there's 2 spaces available. However, if it requires, we could, as I said, condition that if need be.
Can I just confirm then how many parking spaces there are? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. There's 2 parking spaces currently.
Thank you very much. Councillor House.
For clarification, really, I mean, the plan shows allegedly 3 bedrooms. I would call it. I'd call the studies bedrooms. If you put a bathroom on a study, I'd call that a bedroom. So we are effectively treating it as if it was a 5-bedroom dwelling, are we, for planning purposes? I realise there's no difference between 4 and 5 in terms of parking standards, but just in terms of how we've thought about this.
There is space at the front of the dwelling that could accommodate the 3rd space.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this application? No? In that case then, the councillor wishes to start the debate, please. Corbin.
No one else does. This is quite a profile house, actually, and although I don't have anything to declare, I did live in Goodlands Vale 29 years ago, So I do remember it well, and I have visited on many occasions delivering. So this is a prominent house, and it is seen. This looks like a bit of a development for the sake of the development to me. There's an awful lot that has been thrown into these plans. I agree that this is an overdevelopment. This site is very prominent. There are a number of footpaths and the road as well. We haven't actually mentioned the road, but anybody coming, excuse me, in, it's a it's a non-through road, so you've got to go in and out both ways, and you pass that at the same time. And this just feels awkward to me. And I think in terms of a design, it doesn't tick any boxes for me. Can't even say many boxes. It doesn't tick any boxes. I think the building after the work has been carried out is a worse building than it was before it started, which is in keeping with the rest of the houses as you move towards the higher numbers of Goodlands Vale down on that left-hand side as we're looking from the top two pictures. So I'm very happy to propose agreement with the recommendation for this to be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corben. Councillor House?
Yeah, thanks. As ward member for this patch, know the site very well and agree with Ian's comments. Clearly, it's perfectly reasonable for a resident to want to extend their property. But it is those buts that go alongside that. It's got to respect the character of the surrounding properties. And I think it's been described, and it's clearly evident from the plans, it doesn't do that. So if an application came in that respected the adjacencies around this area, then I'm sure we want to permit it, but this doesn't, so we can't. So I'm very happy to second refusal.
Thank you very much, Councillor House. Any other councillor wishes to make any comments? Right, okay. I did actually drive around there yesterday and had a good look. And as Councillor Corben's mentioned about the road and the nature of the area, I think this is totally inappropriate and out of keeping for what's there already. Yes, Councillor House. Councillor.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak, but looking at the overall proposed design, that bulk and the built form are totally out of keeping with the adjoining properties. The scale of everything is out of keeping. The amount of blank brick walls certainly out of keeping. And as Alexander's pointed out, the dormers are considerably larger than any other in the area. And I know that's not a reason to refuse permission, but one has to take into account that there are certain considerations when it just comes to good design, and I think the property as it stands now is very attractive, but when you put all these very shallow pitch roofs on, it will look totally out of keeping. I think the overall design is rather disappointing, so that's all I can really say.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pretty. Then in that case, if no other councillor wishes to speak, we have a proposal from Councillor Ian Corben, seconded by Councillor Keith House, for the recommendation to refuse for the following reasons as set out in the report. So, with regards to that recommendation, could I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Yes. Yeah, I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So that recommendation to refuse is carried. Right, ladies and gentlemen, the order we have for the planning application for 25 High Street, Botley, is the listed consent first and then the application for the building. So what I intend to do is to go for the application for the building first. Thank you very much. And I will ask Claire Martin to present the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. The next application is planning permission for the construction of one two-storey detached dwelling and garage at 25 High Street. The site is shown on red in the location plan and on the aerial photo. The property is located on the southern side of the High Street and sits behind the existing building at number 25. The property is accessed via a long driveway along the western side of the house and forms the end section of the rear garden. The site is set back at approximately 50 metres from the main road, where it would not be visible from the High Street or any other public viewpoints. The site is within a mixed character area containing both residential and commercial properties. Many of the older buildings front directly onto the High Street, and some have small rear gardens. Other properties have buildings behind, such as the commercial use to the east of the site, which has two single-storey warehouse buildings. To the south of the site is a car park for the MOT garage, and to the west of the site is the large two-storey house and substantial grounds at 29 High Street. There is also a small hairdresser's at number 27 in a detached building at the front of the site. In planning terms, the site has a number of constraints. Firstly, the site is in the heart of Botley Conservation Area and is in very close proximity to a number of Grade 2 listed buildings. This includes the existing house at number 25. Development within a conservation area or close to a listed building can only go ahead if it does not detract from the special historical or architectural interest of the heritage assets. The second consideration is the site is within the middle of Botley village centre, which is well served by shops and other facilities. Within sustainable urban locations, planning policy encourages higher densities in order to make the most efficient use of urban land. So members will need to carefully balance the protection of the heritage assets with the requirement to encourage more sustainable development. Next, we take a closer look at the application site. The top row of the photos are taken from the access, moving down the driveway towards the site itself. The first photo is taken from the High Street with the existing house on the left. The photo shows the property's access, and you can see that there is space at the front for two cars to pass before it narrows into a single width driveway. The next photo is taken roughly level with the back of the house, and their garden is on the left-hand side. At the back of the garden is a hedge and a row of shrubs, which already separates the small formal garden behind the house from the larger area to the rear of the property. The final photo is taken from the application site, looking back towards the existing house and its enclosed rear garden. You can see the start of the hedge on the right-hand side of the photo. The bottom photos are all of the application site. The site is relatively flat, with some small trees and vegetation mainly towards the site boundaries. The existing double garage is shown in the last photo, and the roof of the house at number 29 High Street is also visible in the background. Next, we move on to the planning application. The existing house is shown in blue and will retain the garden immediately behind the property, the double garage and a small store next to the driveway. The proposal is for a two-storey detached house and double garage, which I've circled in orange to show their positions. The proposed dwelling is sited towards the eastern side of the plot, with its front elevation overlooking its own garden. The shorter side elevations faces the existing house, and there's around 38-metre separation distance between the two properties. The proposal also includes a new double garage at the northern side of the house behind the existing property. The proposal will result in the loss of about 8 trees and a leylandii hedge, but these are small trees that can be replaced, and no objection has been raised by the tree officer. The proposal will be able to retain 13 trees on the site, mostly around the site boundaries, and these are shown in green. The shrubs and hedge behind the existing property are also to be retained. Next, we move on to the proposed elevations. The proposal is for a two-storey house, and it has a long roof line stretching down to single-storey level, and it's between two gable ends. The design has a high level of detailing. It includes 2 feature chimneys, small pitch roof dormers, and uses recessed sections within the building to break up its massing. The proposed design also includes small areas of tile hangings, which is present on the dormer windows, side elevations, and garages, and this helps to pull the design of the house together. At the bottom of the slide are the elevations of the detached garage, and these are similar proportions to the garage already on the site. Next, we'll quickly go through the floor plans. At ground floor level, there is an open plan kitchen diner on the right-hand side of the property and a drawing room and study on the left. The drawing room has doors which lead out to a small patio. The upper floor has 4 bedrooms, some with en suites, and there is an upstairs bathroom. All of the main first floor windows face over the property's garden. or east towards the commercial site. Those on the eastern side will have a higher glazing specification to reduce noise from the neighbouring commercial use. At this point, I would like to make one update. I'd like to introduce an additional condition. This shall say, no development shall commence until the access gate on the site boundary with the high street has either been removed or set in a minimum of 6 metres from the edge of the highway. This condition was recommended by the highway officer, and it's in order to ensure that cars do not wait on the highway for the gates to open. So next we move on to the key considerations. Firstly, the site is within a sustainable urban edge location where the principle of development is acceptable. The detached house is of a good quality design which is considered to fit in with the mixed character of the area. In terms of heritage, the new dwelling is positioned towards the end of the rear garden, where it's not considered to impact on the setting of the Grade 2 listed building and preserve the character of the Botley Conservation Area, and no objection has been raised by the Built Heritage consultant. In terms of access, the proposal uses the existing site access, which is considered suitable for the low number of vehicular trips associated with both the existing and the proposed dwelling. The site entrance provides space for vehicles to pull off the main road and for 2 cars to pass. No objection has been raised by the highways officer. The application meets standards in terms of car parking, living accommodation and residential amenity, and pre-commencement conditions are recommended to secure tree planting, landscaping and biodiversity enhancements. The recommendation is subject to securing contributions towards the new forest mitigation strategy and the solar recreation mitigation strategy, and then to delegate the decision back to the Service Director for Planning and the Environment in conjunction with the Chair and Vice Chair to grant planning permission with the conditions set out within the committee report. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claire. We have one person registered to speak, and it's down as Mr. Anthony Gosden, and I believe you are. And I apologise that that's the name I have on my list.
Good evening, everybody. Please don't apologise, Madam Chairman. It's my husband who apologises, who had, up until lunchtime today, every intention of coming just to speak, but he's actually too unwell to get out of bed. And so he sent me with the notes. I am Mrs. Lynn Gosden. We are attending because we're very interested, and we own number 29 High Street. However, I must just say at the beginning that Mrs. Dixon contacted us before all this and before she put the application in and talked to us about the plans. She is our neighbour, and we have absolutely no desire to fall out with Mrs. Dixon on this. Simply just to reiterate, we are of the opinion that the proposed development will detract from the character of Botley House, which is a listed building, and it's not a development that we would contemplate living as we do in a listed building adjacent. Nevertheless, we acknowledge Mrs. Dixon's right to develop the site as best suits her financial and domestic requirements. Portland House, our property, is the only neighbouring residential property likely to be significantly impacted by the development. We accept that. This will initially be due to the noise and disruption associated with the construction phase. Thereafter, the inconvenience will be primarily that of sight of the new building from Portland House and its garden. There is little that can be done to alleviate the sight of the house from the south and east-facing windows of Portland House. And we would accept that the house itself in design is not at all unattractive. However, there will be a long-term impact on the enjoyment of the garden from Portland House, from which the new house will be clearly visible. We have therefore proposed the planting of trees and increasing the height of the boundary wall to its original height between our two properties. There has always been a wall between Botley House and Portland House. When we first moved in 1992, the wall was in a rather parlous state. It's not our wall, it belongs to Botley House, and the residents of Botley House at that stage had to rebuild it. We were not in a position, we were in the process of doing a lot of work to our own house, and having just bought it, we were not in a position to do anything about the wall, and they had it rebuilt to their specifications, but it was not put back to its original height. If you go to the garden now, you can see at the Botley House end and at the far end, which looks across to the MOT garage, the height is significantly higher than it is between the two ends. And we would ask that part of the application would be to accept that the height of this boundary wall should be put back as it was originally, and that also some planting is done to screen that. We note that the heritage statement refers to a trellis as an alternative, but we have advised Mrs Dixon that we do not believe this is an acceptable alternative. We've had trellis on our walls on the other side before, and we all know the winds that we've had recently, and trellis doesn't tend to stay all that long. Our entire property, as it's listed, is now surrounded by walls, and I think it's the wall that is our greatest concern in this. I think that's all I wish to say. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Mrs Gosden. Would you like to come back and do that, Claire? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your comments. We would say that there is approximately 30 metres from the edge of the house to the dwelling at number 29. So although you will see the property, it's not considered to be obtrusive. You also mentioned that there is likely to be disruption during the construction management plan, construction phase. We do have a condition that asks for a construction management plan, so we can see if we can reduce the disturbance down to a minimum for you. Also, in relation to the landscaping and the boundary treatment, we do have, again, conditions asking for landscaping information to come in and also for fencing information to be approved, and we can certainly encourage a high wall along your boundary, so it gives you some protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Questions from councillors? Yes, Councillor Kyrle.
Thank you very much, and just have a couple of, with regards to the access, and you said that there's a passing point, and it was back to one of your photographs, but the passing point is what the, no, that one, no, there. So are you saying, therefore, that the passing point is actually onto the frontage of 25, and therefore does that mean that there's going to have to be some kind of legal agreement between the owners in perpetuity of 25 and whoever owns the site to the rear of their property?
The owners, I've spoken to the owners about this, and they are happy for the area next to their property to be used for a car to pass, to allow you to move next to each other. I'm just now thinking the easiest way to secure that. I'm just wondering whether we can do that by a condition. Or, yeah, sorry, we're just having a discussion just to say that I think that would have to be a private matter between the applicant and the new owners of the house.
Yeah, because my concern about that technically is that, yes, it's all very well now for the owner of 25 to say that they're happy for cars to pass on their property, but that isn't in perpetuity technically. Therefore, could have an issue where a new owner of 25 might say, well, actually, I don't want that in the future. I don't want bright lights shining into my flat-roofed extension or whatever that is in the future, and I'm going to put a fence up there or something or other and stop you from doing that, in which case you do have potentially a bit of an issue with regards to accessing, egressing, well, not egressing, well, accessing, egressing, depending which way you're coming in and out, of the site onto the high street.
I think they're asking for some confirmation regarding Nikki. Thank you.
In terms of access, it's a private matter. It's not something.
So, ladies and gentlemen, just pausing the meeting at this stage. Thank you.
Sorry about that, we were just having a debate. It's the space we're talking about is actually within the blue line, which means it's owned by the residents of number 25, and we could have a condition to say that that has to be a passing place.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not quite sure how that sticks up if it's not going to have the ownership of the site at the rear is not going to be the owner of that particular piece of land at the front of 25, so I'm not quite sure how that works out, but you can condition it as much as you like, but I think that would be a bit of an issue in the future. But I do have other questions. Just regard the removal of the trees proposed. I know that the tree officer has said that they're relatively small samples, specimens or whatever, but it is a concern of me to lose those assets. And are there proposed replacements of similar within the site, or what to mitigate their loss?
Yeah, we've put a condition on asking for a replacement planting plan. They are small trees, and yes, it'd be possible to replace them. It's just where the trees are at the moment, it's not possible to have the dwelling and those.
Right, I do have a worry with replacement tree planting plans, unfortunately, because they don't tend to deliver what's being removed. And I mean, clearly you can't plant something. I know it's only a smallish tree, etc., but you're talking about 8. My worry is that you've lost again. I raised this at a previous meeting. You lose not only the aesthetics, but also the biodiversity nature of that particular tree. And I think you're looking at number 5, 4 and 5, whatever. Some of those potentially are going to be lost. So it would be interesting to see what is going to be proposed and what can actually then be introduced onto the site, given that there obviously isn't going to be as much space to be able to do it. The other question is, has there been any, I didn't mention to see anything in the report considering it's in the conservation area, and this site probably has been part of that plot for a significant number of years, I would suggest. Has there been any archaeological interest or anything, or any survey undertaken on the site?
No, there isn't any archaeological history with the site. It hasn't come out as one of our constraints, so no.
I was just wondering, because obviously this particular part, Botley in itself, clearly has been used for a considerable period of time, many guises, and given the fact that the property grounds are Grade 2 listed, etc., and dating back to the 1800s or whatever, that I was wondering whether or not any survey was being proposed to be done, even a quick survey, just to make sure that we're not going to be, shall we say, building a 4-bedroom house in perpetuity over something that might be of interest.
We do have a GIS plan when we book in the planning applications, and it does show archaeological hotspots. This wasn't one that came up, so it's not something that's been raised as part of the planning application.
Do you have another question, Councillor Kyrle?
Yes, I do, yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I've got a list, as usual. No, I just would like to know whether or not it is possible to condition, with regards to the issues that had been raised by Mrs. Gosden, relating to the boundary wall and conditions regarding the noise mitigation plan, obviously during the development, but also the vegetation planting scheme, so that can actually continue to offer some sort of additional privacy, if you like, if we're minded to approve the application.
Yeah, conditions 6 and 7 on the committee report are for boundary treatment and landscaping and a tree planting plan, so they certainly can be conditioned.
Not a trellis. We are talking about wall.
When the information comes in, I will make sure it's not a trellis, and I will push for a full-size wall.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Kyrle. Councillor House.
Thank you, Chair. My question is nowhere near as interesting as Councillor Kyrle's. The idea of dead princes buried there from the Middle Ages is kind of intriguing, isn't it? No, exactly, you never know. I think it's a really serious point, actually, because Botley is a historic old community, and it goes back as far as anywhere else in the borough, around the centre of the old village. My question is a curiosity rather than anything else. I'm quite happy to put my place on this one. Botley is a market town sort of function, and it has development over centuries and centuries, and it's very mixed development. Some low density, some very high density, and it's the character and quirkiness in it are part of its attraction. I'm sure we'll come back to that on the listed building issue in a bit, but just in terms of this application, which doesn't take the listed building issues into account, because we're going to come back to those, I was surprised there was no reference in the report to the local plan minimum density standard. The local plan has a minimum density on urban sites to make best use of urban land, which would suggest that there will be 5 units on this site, not 1, because at 9.77 units per hectare, it's massively underusing urban land, and urban land is a scarce resource that we can't replicate. So I just wonder why there wasn't any reference to the local plan minimum density standard and the arguments put in both directions. I can understand there are arguments in both directions, but we ought to be making them.
Yes, I didn't actually put the reference to the standards. I have listed the various policies, and I have said that it is an urban site and we do encourage higher densities, but next time that I get an application like this, it's something that I will mention.
What were the arguments?
It was just the balance of the fact that, yes, it's an urban village centre and we've got to obviously promote higher density, but it's also the fact that it's part of the conservation area, and it's in a very sensitive location next to listed buildings, so it's trying to balance that, and I think in this case it does have quite a strong important character, so that's why I think the slightly lower density development is acceptable.
Thank you very much, Claire. Councillor Kinloch?
Yeah, sorry, you mentioned about the gate. I appreciate you're 6 metres in. I just can't quite work where that is. And with the passing point, because reversing back onto the high street is not going to be a feasibility. So it's just where that gate is in relation to the plans, if possible.
I've spoken to the applicant and actually they're willing to take off the gate, so I think that's acceptable. The highway officer has asked for 6 metres, but I can adapt it so that it is behind the actual passing place itself, so yeah, it won't obstruct that.
Yeah, I think that's really important if we are going to do that, that is there for safety.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from councillors? Oh, yes, Councillor Kyrle.
Just quickly, I thought I'd get it in as we are actually talking about the application itself, is whether or not we can condition that we use swift bricks and fat boxes, etc., where appropriate, because I know it's mentioned in the report, but I don't think it's a condition that we would do so. And my worry is if we are looking at doing this, where there will be an impact on a basically garden site, if you like, albeit quite a large one, that we do make sure that we utilise as much biodiversity enhancements within the new build as absolutely possible.
We've got a condition that asks for a biodiversity enhancement plan. Bat boxes and swift bricks are something that our biodiversity officer pushes for, so it will either come in or she'll ask for those to be submitted, so yeah, we will get those in there.
Okay, any other questions? No, in which case then, we'll ask councillors to start the debate, please. Thank you. Who'd like to start the debate on this one? Yes, Councillor Kyrle, thank you.
Oh, dearie me, here we go again. How many copybooks am I going to be? notwithstanding Hampshire County Council's comments, I am concerned about the passing point. I do think that's a bit of an issue because it is going to be on the 25 land, and I am concerned that you have got quite a narrow access to which I know can't be overcome unless you demolish a building or part of a building, but it is a narrow access, and as I say, the proposed passing point is on somebody else's property, albeit that obviously there's agreement at the moment, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will happen in the future. I know this sort of trips into the next bit, so I'll be a bit careful, obviously, but I sort of am concerned about the fact of developing this because of the impact potentially it will have on the conservation zone and the setting, if you like, of the Grade 2 listed buildings. I do totally understand the issue about dwelling density, etc. And if we are expected to have something on site, then one or two potentially, or two smaller rather than one large potentially. If that's the way we were going to go, I would probably see we have to have something, I suppose. But there is, again, without trying to be careful not to trip in the next one, it's whether it's acceptable to have that impact potentially in the conservation zone and obviously the settings, if you like, of those Grade 2 listed buildings. I mean, this particular bunch, if you like, these 2 or 3 houses here are significant assets within the conservation zone itself within Botley, and I wouldn't want to necessarily see those being eroded away, so it is quite unique in this respect. There is obviously higher density development or infill development, backfill development like Warner Mews, etc., across the road. It sort of, again, sits quite nicely in its setting. But these particular dwelling houses themselves are very key, if you like, to the character of Botley High Street, albeit that you won't get to see this dwelling potentially from the road, still in effect will affect the overall sort of feeling, if you like, or setting with regards to those Grade 2 listed buildings. So I do have some sort of reservations and concerns about it, but I can understand why this is being proposed to be brought forward. But my main concerns, I think, were really the access, the effects potentially on neighbouring properties, and as I say, the access arrangements with regards to the high street, given the fact that we do have quite a lot of issues with regards to air quality management zone, but we also have issues with regards to the amount of cars using the high street, which hopefully will be resolved when bypass is built eventually at some point. But hey, that's the county council again, so we won't go there. Yeah, those were my main concerns with regards to the actual planning application. If there was a way of conditioning Swiftbricks, etc., I do appreciate that the officer is going to be looking potentially at biodiversity with enhancements with regards. But I've seen this before, and the developer goes, "Oh no, we're not going to put it." Well, apparently a developer can put a Swiftbrick in. It costs them no more whatsoever to do it. They just need to be nudged in the right direction. So I would like that definitely put in because we need to. If we're going to be starting to develop more of our sort of green lungs within developments like, say, in Botley Village, we do need to make sure that those elements are included right from the start, rather than trying to retrofit it later on, which just won't happen.
Claire, I gather you want to come back on something.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was just to make a recommendation to put just 2 additional conditions. The first was condition the passing place, which obviously we've spoken to legal, it's inside the blue line, so we feel that we can condition that as a parking place. And the second condition was just amending the gate, so it's more than the 6 metres inside the site behind the parking place. So they were the 2 amendments. Thank you.
Councillor Kinloch.
Can I just confirm that's passing place, not parking place?
Thank you. Any other councillor wishes to? Yes, Councillor Gomer.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, when I saw that red line plan, I was sceptical. But looking at the plans, I think it feels like it fits quite comfortably. I don't think it's going to be particularly intrusive from the high street, which I guess is the place that most people will experience this conservation site from. I'm propose the recommendation as printed with those additional conditions that have been suggested.
Very much, Councillor Gomer. Any other councillor? Yes, Councillor Corben.
I'm happy to second the application. The first conservation case, I appreciate we're not talking about the conservation element now, that I've seen actually, so it's quite interesting. The house seems to be appropriate on the site. One comment that comes up time and time again is the fact that the trees that we're losing are small and of no great purpose. Well, I would just disagree with the wording. I appreciate it's a standard wording, but I think it does sort of send the message that no one's interested in them, and the tree officer might not be, but actually the birds are, and everything else. And if we are, and I've been in too many meetings with Councillor Kyrle, because he is right that there are only so many trees of a certain size that can in the world. So if we look at this holistically with what we're trying to do here, losing 8 trees here, the 8 trees that are going to replace it are already growing somewhere. So we are losing trees. So I do absolutely sympathise with that. But having said that, having looked at the plans, I'm happy to second the application.
Very much, Councillor House.
Yeah, I'm not going to vote against this, but I can't say I'm wildly enthusiastic for the density reasons that I outlined earlier. We have seen in some of the backland developments in Botley pretty tastefully done small courtyard developments at higher densities. You only get urban sites come forward on a really rare occasion, and I think it would be far better to have a higher density, smaller courtyard scheme here, which could easily have accommodated a number of smaller units, which would provide more support for the local economy, more support for those local shops and services, and meet more housing needs. So I'm kind of, because I don't want to vote against it, I'm probably going to end up abstaining, because I just think we're not encouraging good use of the site.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor House. Any other councillors wish to speak? Okay then, right. We have the recommendation to grant permission as set out in the report with the 2 additional conditions has been proposed by Councillor Gomer and seconded by Councillor Corben. So could I have a show of hands, please, to grant plan permission as set out in the report? Thank you very much. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is carried then. Thank you. Right, we'll now go back to the previous item on the agenda, which is the listing of building consent. And I'll ask Claire if you had any more to that. Thank you.
Sorry, I was going to do a very brief presentation, but my computer seems to have crashed. The application is for the construction of listed building consent, and this obviously is separate from the planning application itself. Listed building consent looks at the architectural interest and the historical interest of the listed building, and members just need to consider what impact the new dwelling will have on the setting of the listed building.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this one? Yes, Councillor Corben.
Thank you. Councillor Kyrle. Sorry, was a bit of better. No. I'm sure you had a better question than mine. I had a question about the fact that the original listing was for the house and its setting, if I'm reading the instructions. How much of the fact that the garden was part of the listing is taken into account? Is the listed house affected, or the listing, sorry, of the house affected by the fact that there is a substantially smaller garden now compared to when the listing was granted. I don't know if I've explained that properly. Has it changed? Obviously, we don't know why the house was listed. It was one of the original houses that was listed, so that gets a higher mark or a bigger tick that it was a more significant house or part of a more significant series of houses. And so I just wondered how significant the garden and the setting of this house has been affected by any planning permission.
Okay, I think the listing itself is more about the house itself and the features of the house. Obviously, the garden forms part of the setting, but there's the formal garden right next to the property itself, and then you've got all the attractive hedgerows, and then you've got a big section at the back. So I think having a building on the section at the back probably doesn't have a huge impact on the listing itself. We have consulted our Build Heritage consultant, and he hasn't raised objection to it.
So going on from that then, so why is there an application for this then, if we're saying that they aren't linked? Because if they're not linked, then you wouldn't need to, because it wouldn't have an impact on the listing building then, would it?
I think when it comes to listed buildings themselves, planning applications, they set things that need planning permission. Listed building, it's more of a judgment call. If it can potentially have even a small impact, then quite often we play it safe and we ask for a listed building application. But I think in this case, the impact is so small that I personally as an officer don't, but obviously it's up to members to decide which way to go.
Any other questions, please, regarding the listed building consent? Nope. Okay then, right, we'll move on to debate. Any councillor wish to start the debate, if there is any debate? Thank you. No, no debate then. Right, so I will ask for a proposer for the recommendation to grant listed building consent for the conditions and the reasons given, please. Thank you, Councillor House. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pretty, thank you. All those in favour of this recommendation, please show. Thank you very much. Any objections? Abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 10, which is the financial management report, and I'll ask Ross McLean to introduce it. Ross, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. 8 recommendations in total in my report tonight, including the supplementary document submitted. Just to remind, the recommendations were as follows. The approval of the allocation of £4,014 from our budgets to award the 10 community grant award applications to be received as decided by or recommended by the HEWEB subgroup grant panel. 2 was to approve the allocation from reserves of 1,820 for 4 bins, 2 in Portlet Place and 1 at Botley Park. 3rd was to use £3,966 from reserves for 6 sessions of clearing the penny wart from Cheltenham Gardens Pond from spring 2024. Next was to approve the allocation of 10,325 from developer contributions for the Peewit Hill Habitat Management Project. Next was to note the spend of £2,000 for the leisure facility feasibility report from reserves. Then as to ask for approval for the proposed local area action plan for 24-25 for HEWEB. Number 7 was to note the achievements. This is a document just highlighting some of the good things this committee has funded and supported over the last couple of weeks and months. And then finally on my supplementary report was the recommendation of £19,990 from developer contributions for the renovation of the Hatch Cafe in West End. That's my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ross. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Gomer.
Not a question. I think I need to declare a non-pecuniary interest in the community grants as a governor of St James's School.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gomer. Any other questions? Get Councillor Corben.
Thank you. I just had a question on the replacement bins at Portlet Place and Wallace Avenue. There is a review, or there was a review of Dowd's Farm bins. And I just wonder where that is in the hierarchy of getting things done. That must be 18 months, 2 years ago, and it's on the desk somewhere, I know, but we do still get quite a lot of inquiries, and it would be nice to be able to say yes or no. And so just maybe something we take offline, but as we're talking bins, I'll ask the question, Ross. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Corben. I can answer that from my understanding of talking to the guys at Street Scene. We can technically put bins in tomorrow if we wanted to on that site. However, we cannot empty them because it's not our land. We're waiting for the land ownership to change over. So the bins have been ordered, they're ready to go, but we can't put them in or we can't clear them because it's not our land to do so. So it's the land ownership issue. It's my understanding talking to the Street Scene guys. It's, I guess, quite frustrating.
Is there anything we can do to push that along? Is there anything I can do to push that along? That does seem incredible. I know it's a conversation that we've had on various parts of Dowd's Farm, but crumbs.
Absolutely. We'll have a conversation offline to see what we can do next, but, you know...
We need to give it a good, solid kick, I think, because not having bins 20 years after 15 years, and when was Dad's farm? 20 years ago? Yeah. 17 years ago that they went in. Carry on at this rate, we'll all be gone, and we still won't have any bins. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Corben. And just to say, with the bins in Portlet Place, they were raised by residents in Portlet Place because they had the old ones that fitted onto the lamppost, and they're overflowing where people walk their dogs down that way. So I did have a email from the residents saying they were particularly grateful that they'd been replaced. Thank you, Councillor.
Also in bins, and also like Ian going off slightly at a tangent. We had, I think, a suggestion a while back, a few months ago, of a review of bin provision in the older parts of Hedge End. We've been pretty good generally, Dowd's Farm accepted, about getting bins put in on new developments that have gone up. Less good at just making sure we've got a good pattern of them elsewhere. And I just wondered, it's clearly not something for a public meeting, but maybe at a team meeting, we could just have a map of all the bins that we empty, so we could just ponder whether there are obvious gaps or changes that could usefully be made. I know that you, Chair, and I have had some requests from residents fairly recently. I had another one whilst I was out walking the streets yesterday afternoon from a resident in an older part of Hedge End saying we could do with a dog bin, and it'd just be quite helpful to get a map to take a review of these things.
Yep, as if by magic. I know one of my colleagues is working on that at the moment, particularly with the new bin placement. So there's a mapping exercise for the whole of the borough to look at bins that are in what shape they're in. Also, yeah. But for us down in Heworth then, so those bins are being reviewed at the minute. So we will have a map that we can share with members to sort of show what state the bins are in currently and what new ones may be needed in areas that are coming online. So watch this space, and I'll share that when it's available.
Thank you very much for that, Ross. Yeah, Councillor Kyrle.
Thank you. Just with regards to the Wallace Avenue issue, how many bins are we proposing there? Just one, or is it more than one?
So it's 2 bin requests that are coming from the parish. So this is bins on the lower end of the site. I think it's fairly well established at the far end, and we had the A board sign up because there's been quite a few people leaving dog waste in bags at the far end. So
there's 2
bins that are strategically placed at the bottom end.
Can I also ask, with regards to the habitat management programme, with regards to the developers' contribution? I presume it's just an oversight that money wasn't actually allocated to the scheme, given that that was the translocation element of the DC was that it should have been in place right from the start.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, this committee I think approved it when Julia Butt was the LAC back in 2019, 2017, and it was just an oversight that the 10,000 hadn't gone across. So there's an ecology team that are looking into the reptile area, and they've noted that they were a shortfall in their budget planning at the start of this. So it's been a long time coming, but it was just a simple case of being allocated specific for the project.
There wasn't the case that Foreman Homes were dragging their heels with regards to their allocating it.
Not on this occasion.
And just my last question, if I may, as well, is the feasibility study for potential leisure facility. What's that about?
It's probably commercially sensitive at this moment in time to talk about looking at a leisure facility in that area. So probably best for a discussion near that time offline. Okay.
but obviously if it's commercially sensitive, you can understand why it pricked my interest when I then saw it in the report and wondering what it's about then.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on this, on the finance report, including the supplementary, please? No? In that case, is there any debate on this? Yes, Councillor Gomer.
Not debate, just a comment. I have shared it privately regarding the developers' contributions towards the Hedge Cafe. I think that's welcome. I'd be pleased to see that enhanced. But I have a reservation that it's actually not sufficient, that the pinch point is still going to be the number of covers. And so I suppose I would like to see a further request come in to do some other work around the parish centre, possibly also including some renewal of the play area there. I think there's lots of scope to do something good, and I would just like to see it come in.
Asman?
Thank you for that, Councillor Gomer. We're doing this now because the kitchen is in, it's not good for purpose. In addition, we've got we'd love to get this done, and I have to speak to Ross very nicely. We'd like, if possible, for the funding to be available so that we could have the works carried out before May, which will be the 10th anniversary of the construction of the cafe, which is really good news. And I know it's always worried Councillor Gomer, the finances of this, but just to put your mind at rest, in the current year, the deficit that was the deficit at the end of this year period last year was £23,294. This year it's £12,614, so they have actually reduced that deficit by over £10,000. And with just the added kitchen, it will make all that difference and enable them to continue in the way they're doing, which they're doing a fantastic job. And yeah, we have got grander plans, but they do need a lot of looking into the logistics of where, because of the limited space that's in and around the parish centre. Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Asman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think you're right. And obviously, having lots of conversations with the clerk there about strategic thinking of the site, particularly the play area. I think we're having some good conversations. I think he's very keen to get this area or this kitchen done for him to next look at the play area, which is something that's on their radar. So I'm asking for a business case and understanding of what's going in before I can put it forward to you guys for a decision and debate. And secondly, I think there really is some serious strategic thinking about the site in the future. As we all know, that Hampshire are looking at various changes and cuts to library services, and you know, we've done different things in the past, being quite creative with this local authority down at Hamble, for example, with the Mercury Hub, and it could well be we look at if they were to remove a library service, a book exchange with the cafe expanding and thinking a bit differently as opposed to a traditional library service. So I agree, whenever I've been in that cafe or walked through, it's heaving, it's very busy, and it needs more tables to be able to cater for demand. And it may well be we look at some bigger thinking in the future depending on what's put upon themselves.
Thank you very much, Ross. Any other debate? I think it's excellent, actually, because there aren't many. I don't think there are hardly any, or if there are any cafes along West End High Street where people can actually sit in and have a coffee or a cup of tea. And as we know, there are quite a lot of people on their own, so it's great for people to socialise, and obviously situated where it is in the parish council offices. I think it's really good, and with the library too. I think this also came out of the fact that we have unallocated developers' contributions, and I think this is making good use of some of that money for our community rather than just leaving it sitting there. So I would encourage our parish and town councils to come forward with some ideas. Thank you. Right, if there's no other debate... Oh, sorry, Councillor Kinloch.
It's just a very small one. I'd just like to commend this local area committee for continuing to fund some of our small community groups through the community grants scheme, where funding has been cut at county level for some of our more vulnerable groups. I think this is really key. In fairness, I was slightly disappointed that we didn't have more groups come forward, because actually the groups that we have given money to is a great, or sort of proposing to give money to, are really worthwhile organisations providing for some of the most vulnerable in the community, whether it be MenCap or whether it be supporting our schools. I'd just be interested to know, we've kind of put out for youth grants for some of the other money, just sort of understanding how many sort of applications we've got going towards that and how much we can sort of help to push these things forwards, because I think it's absolutely key when other funding is drying up that we continue to support those people. So I'd just like to sort of commend the work that's gone on behind that.
Couldn't agree with you more, actually, Councillor Kinloch. When we met as a grants committee, one of the things we discussed was the fact that the numbers have reduced in groups that are actually applying for grants, and we consider that one of the reasons may be behind how all the form filling that has to take place, and that some groups might think, oh well, if I'm not going to get it, why should I fill out all these forms? Thank you. Why should I fill out all these forms if I'm not going to get any money? I mean, some big organisations, they have people that do them themselves, but small groups don't necessarily have that. So what we decided was then to have initially a single form, just as like an expression of interest, so that that would come to committee, to the grants panel committee to look at, and then consider whether that was a good application. And then if it was, then that particular group would then continue to fill out the rest of the form. So there would still be scrutiny. We're not getting rid of scrutiny, but it's just the fact that with one form, we may be getting some more. And in actual fact, Ross has just said to me, we've got 9 applications for the youth grant so far, which is pretty good. So thank you. Right then, so if there's no other debate, do I have a proposer for the recommendation on the report, please? Thank you. Councillor Tennent, seconded. Councillor Gomer, thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. And I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So item 11 is planning appeals, and members, are you happy just to note those appeals, please? Thank you very much. In that case then, that concludes this meeting, and I would just like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for coming along, and the next meeting will be held on Monday the 4th of March at 7 p.m. in the Berry. So I say thank you, and I wish you a very good evening. Thank you.